Thank you, Dr. Stevenson, and I hope you all follow her advice and to take courses in African American Studies and to major in African American Studies. It's a very, very important and vital program that we have, not only at the University of Central Florida, but in other universities throughout the country. I want to thank the African American Studies Department, Dr. Stevenson, and all the others who were involved in inviting me to speak during this, for this nice forum. Today, we're going to focus on Mother Laura Adorkar Kofi, Queen Mother of America's Black Nationalist Movement. Now, before I go on, any of you who know me a little bit know that for the most part, when you see me, you see my son. I take him to all my lectures, and we travel the world. But I have a quote that I made for him and two others, and that is, educate the children with truth, strength, and dignity, for they will never be deceived nor fear their enemy. And that's a quote that I think all of you all should have too. Because we as students, we as academicians, we as pursuers of information and knowledge, we're always going to be challenged one way or the other. People are going to tell us and try to treat us in a way that negates our intellect, negates our struggle for freedom and right, and negate our feeling about the whole issue of liberation. Sometimes people attack you by your pocketbook. Sometimes they attack you by your character. But we as a people who have always fought for truth can never be quiet. We can never be frightened. We have to work through the enemy. And that's what they are. They're the enemy. You have to work through the enemy to speak the truth, to speak truth to power, and to be willing to stand on it at all times. At all times, even if you're the only one. So that's what I teach my son, and that's how he is going to be. I'm teaching him how to be a freedom fighter, and that's what all of you are. Now today, we're focusing on Laura Adorkar Kofi, born in 1893 and died in 1928. The theme of this topic deals with the fact that, one, she's the mother of the Black Nationalist movement. I also call her the African warrior. She came to the United States around in the 1920s. Two, she created Black utopian communities throughout the country, in Florida, Mississippi, South Carolina, Georgia, communities that taught African culture, communities that taught Black revolutionary theology, communities that taught Pan-Africanism, the first person like this in the 20th century. Third point, she created a bona fide organization. Now let me teach you about something. It's one thing to talk about something, because oftentimes this society, this government will allow you to talk. I mean, they allow Dick Gregory, they allow several others to talk, but you really have no real strength until you organize. Until you organize an organization. This is what she did. Another sub-point that we're going to talk about, and that is, she is the first major Black figure of the 20th century who was assassinated by a rival Black leader and organization. And we'll talk about that. But this woman, Kofi, the African warrior, the Nubian princess, was a tremendous and exciting person. We're going to learn more. Now, she is from Kumasi, Ghana. Now, Ghana is in the West Africa. Many people of African descent who are in the room, your parents, your foreparents, your ancestors came from Ghana. Ghana, which is a small piece now, but Ghana, the term Ghana was the first of the last three great empires of West Africa. This woman lived in an area of Kumasi called Asofa, a small community. Now, Kumasi and Asofa is considered the Garden City of West Africa. It is also considered the heartbeat of Ghana. Now, how many of you have ever been to Ghana? Any? Well, that's someplace you should go on your spring break, don't you think? Somewhere. Just don't go to the beach and go wild. All right, go there. But anyway, the heartbeat, if you've ever been there, it is a place of music, high life music. I mean, people in Ghana, when they party, they party. I mean, talking about from maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon to 7 o'clock the next morning. I mean, that's how they are. Now, Kumasi is approximately 160 miles in the interior from Accra. You see Accra in the square, that's the capital of Ghana, 160 miles inside. Now, within this community, they have a native group of people called the Ashanti. You ever heard of the Ashanti people? The Ashanti people. The Ashanti people are the major people in this part of Ghana. Now, one of the things you should know about the Ashanti is that the Ashanti, they were one of the native groups in Africa that consistently rejected white colonialism and encroachment. They had a series of wars called the Ashanti Wars. The last one was in 1874. They took the best of the British and they gave the British their best. These wars were bloody, hard. There was nothing, the British could not just walk in and take over. They had tough wars. The community she lives in also is a very spiritual community. Now, the Ashanti people, which is one of the larger ethnic groups of West Africa, have a belief of the golden stool. Some of you have probably seen stools in African stores. And at the beginning of their development, they were splintered groups. And one of the chiefs of the Ashanti people stated, according to legend, that he summoned from the heavens a golden stool. The golden stool floated down from heaven. And the golden stool, according to the spirits and the gods, told him that if he sat on this stool, all the Ashanti and all the fractured communities will come together in one community, one nation, called the Ashanti Nation. They also maintained that the structure and the rule of the Ashanti people is to organize people from all over, bring them together under one law, one God, one fraternity. This is some of the things that influence Kofi. Today, Kumasi is a community of over 1,600,000 people. It's not a village. It's a major city. And in this area, they focus on black theology. Next slide, please. Kumasi, as you see, is a very structured, very modern community. And Accra is the major capital. Please go on. This is one of the areas that they shop and they work, and that represents the cultural element of that. Now, Kumasi is known mostly for kente cloth. Accordingly to legend, Miss Kofi, Laura Adorkar Kofi, wore a lot of kente when she was in the United States. Oftentimes when we think of kente cloth, we think of something that is new, coming up in the United States in the 1980s, 1990s. But it's been around for hundreds of years. The idea of kente cloth, according to legend, was that it was developed, a man learned how to do it by watching a spider weave a web. And the man who saw this argued that kente is a very refined element, and it represents God, culture, and ingenuity and strength. And that the only people who should wear it is people of royalty. So while she was in the United States, she wore kente a lot. First time for many people to see. Please go on. Now, while Kumasi now is 80% Christian-based, it's 100% African-based spirituality. Believe that people have the power to look into the future, to take off spells and so on. But also, more importantly, they see religion as an element for liberation, revolutionary theology coming from this. All right? We would also see that when Kofi came about, she said that the angels from heavens and the angels of her people came to her and told her that she had a calling to liberate and help black people in the Americas. First time she heard it, she said, I don't want to do it. She said, rather, I'll go around Ghana. So she went around Ghana, but she fell ill, severely ill. Angel came back and said, you must go across the Atlantic. She didn't want to go. She liked Africa. Why go to a place that she knows nothing about? So she said, I'll travel and do my work in West Africa, going to places like Senegal, going to places like Mali and Cameroon and so on. She fell ill again. Angel came back and said to her, you must go. She said, okay, I'm going this time. So she crossed the Atlantic. Next slide, please. All right. In the first part, she goes into entry into Canada, all right, for a short while. Then she makes entry into the United States. Now, what's interesting about the migration is that oftentimes when we think of people migrating to the United States, we think of Europeans. That's all we think of at this time. We think of people going to Ellis Island, and they having either Italian or German or a Polish or a Hebrew or accent of some type. But let me tell you something. There were hundreds of thousands of people who were coming through Ellis Island, coming into the United States, seeing that same Statue of Liberty, who were from Africa. We saw a number of people of African descent coming from Central America, Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras. We saw the same group of people, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latinos coming in from the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and other areas. We saw them coming in from Brazil and Mexico and Venezuela. So she was part of a great migration. Put that in your notes. A great migration into the Americas. Next slide. And these migrants, not all of them, as oftentimes depicted, were poor. Not all of them were worn out. We see that many Africans who came did not fit this image, downtrodden, hungry, looking for that type of opportunity. Next slide. One of the great ones who came in was Kwame Nkrumah. But there were others like Kwame Nkrumah. You have a person by the name of Kwesi Bakalo from Ghana, who went in the 1920s and studied at Carnegie Institute. Carnegie Institute is now what? Who's from Pittsburgh? No one? Okay, Carnegie Mellon, major school, all right? When he finished from that school, he taught political science in Russia and became a great political scientist in Ghana. Another person, William Hardy from Nigeria. He came in, all right? He studied in America and became a great military leader in the Nigerian army. Then you have Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah probably represents one of the best of West Africa. He came in and went to Lincoln University, a black school in Pennsylvania. Pledged Phi Beta Sigma. Any Sigmas are here? Should know that. But he becomes Ghana's first prime minister. He's a friend of W.E.B. Du Bois. He's a friend of John Henry Clark. In fact, he is the he is the first African to establish dual citizenship for African Americans who want to go to Ghana. Many of you don't know that. If you go to Ghana, you can apply for dual citizenship, a citizen of that country and a citizen of the United States, something that's productive. In this photograph, this has occurred in 1957. Martin Luther King, a young man now, goes to Accra and he meets with Kwame Nkrumah. And at this meeting, they're celebrating the independence of Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah, one of the greatest leaders of our time, he came in representing people like Kofi, not coming with nothing, but coming with honor, coming with thought, coming with elements to expand. Next slide, please. Kofi found Harlem. What type of place was Harlem in the 1920s? It was a vibrant place, a place of music, literature, activity, a place of culture. But it also was a place that represented a new black person. But what do I mean by that? A person who was not like the 19th century African, just coming out of slavery. A person who was not like the 19th century African, who was benign and just happy just to be free, but a person now who represents black thought, self-determinism, demanding what they want. Now also note that at this time, Harlem is the most populated black city in the world. The most populated black city in the world. And when you left Lower Manhattan, when you left Brooklyn, when you left other areas and went into Harlem, you went into a world that was just fabulous. Strong, different, exciting, black. Next slide. Some of the people that Kofi found in these areas, one was Alice Dunbar. Alice Dunbar is the wife of Paul Laurence Dunbar. Paul Laurence Dunbar was the first black to get the to be Poet Laureate, National Poet Laureate of the United States. But for her, this woman, she spoke out constantly on the rights of women. She spoke out loudly on the rights of black women in particular in the 1920s. She was a writer for A. Philip Randolph's magazine called The Messenger. The Messenger was probably the most militant magazine at that time, a socialist magazine. But she is one of those women who was on the case for right. She was what you call a race leader. John Henry Clark, a man I knew personally. John Henry Clark, self-trained historian out of Harlem, left Mississippi to go to Harlem. All right? Only man that I know who had a PhD but didn't finish high school. Brilliant. Has something like 27 books. All right? He was a product of this Harlem Renaissance, speaking the truth to power. These are the type of people that Kofi, when she came into the United States, congregated herself with. As a footnote, going back to Alice Dunbar, for some of you, you should read this article that she wrote. It's called From a Woman's Point of View. All right, 1927, Messenger magazine. Brilliant, still is important today. Next slide, please. Now, at the same time, you have this new Negro, new African American with new ideas on race. They weren't writing and talking for white people and other people to endorse them. They weren't writing and talking so they could have tea with somebody, all right, and trying to rub elbows and trying to live in some community away from the African American community. Du Bois, he was bold and aggressive in his writing. Helped forms the NAACP. Later on becomes a socialist. A constant critic on race relationship in the United States. 1963, at the age of 100 or so, he's in Ghana. He's in Ghana living, working with Kwame Nkrumah. But he was a man who challenged society, challenged the African American to do the right thing. Walter White, National Secretary of the NAACP, great friend to another Floridian named James Weldon Johnson. And he traveled throughout the South because he was blonde hair and blue eyes and looked white. He was able to openly experience lynchings. He would go to lynchings, write the story about it, and talk about it throughout the various newspapers like the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender and the various NAACP organs. Took his life in his own hands. Two of the greatest activists at the time and thinkers. One, a man from Jacksonville, Florida, A. Philip Randolph, who was intimately connected to Laura Kofi. A. Philip Randolph, he creates something called the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters Union, the first black union in the country. A man who openly challenged again racism, saying that blacks were not treated on the trains as porters and workers and as cooks. Give them a fair chance. A man who openly challenged Franklin Delano Roosevelt, telling Roosevelt, listen, Roosevelt, it's okay for you to fight against Nazism in Germany, to fight against fascism in Italy, to fight against imperialism in Japan. It's okay to do that, but don't forget about fighting against racism at home. And he said to FDR in the 1940s, where he developed the March on Washington movement with Bernard Rustin, he said, listen, if you do not change the conditions of African Americans on issues of segregation and being segregated in factories, we will call 100,000 black men and women to march on Washington in the 1940s. Mr. Roosevelt became frightened. His wife, Eleanor, was a good friend of Mary McLeod Bethune, influenced him, and he began to change things. He is credited for the Double V campaign. Victory at home against racism, victory abroad against Nazism. A. Philip Randolph. He is also, as a footnote, since yesterday all of you probably celebrated Martin Luther King and heard about the 1963 march, if it wasn't for this man, there wouldn't be the march. He is the organizer. Not King, he is. A. Philip Randolph. One of the greatest men that we have ever produced, all right? Met with the presidents and so on. Next slide, please. Here's the original bad boy. Marcus Garvey. Tough, short, black, bold, hardcore, all right? Marcus Garvey developed the largest black organization in the history of modern society, an organization that numbered over 20 million worldwide, the Universal Negro Improvement Association. He, like how he looks, he was a product of the Maroon community. How many Jamaicans we have here? All right, you should know something about the Maroons. And how many Haitians? Okay, a little bit more. How many people from the Dominican Republic? Let's go down the list. All right, Cubans. All right, all the Floridians. Nobody's claiming Florida? All right, all right. Well, in all these communities, even Florida, we had Maroon communities. And they were Africans fighting for freedom, going into the hills. In Florida, they went into the swamp areas with Native Americans. In Jamaica, into the hills. In Cuba, into the hills. In the Dominican Republic, Hispaniola, into the hills, to create their own societies and to fight against slavery. They were the tough guys, hardcore, fought, kill or be killed. That was their motto. Marcus Garvey comes from that breed, a Maroon relative. He was a rival to A. Philip Randolph. Marcus Garvey's paper called The Negro World. It was one of the strongest papers that the world has ever seen. Published in 3 languages. Producing 500,000 copies a week. That's a paper. All right, next slide. So, Kofi, she comes to the United States. She joins forces with Marcus Garvey. She is doing internationally what Garvey is doing domestically in the United States. Now, when she came to join forces with Garvey, what did Garvey offer? He offered an infrastructure. In 1920, Marcus Garvey, with his Universal Negro Improvement Association, brought in 25,000 people for a meeting at Madison Square Garden. This is 1920, 25,000 black people and people from other parts of the world. When she met Marcus Garvey had a fleet of ships ready to do business with people from in this hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere. When she met Garvey had businesses and global chapters throughout the world. And he had a group of men called the African Legion. Now, the African Legion, prior to the Nation of Islam, fruit of Islam, they were some of the baddest, boldest brothers you ever meet. They will hurt you. They were tough. They were strong. They were militant. Because Garvey argued that in order to have your country, you have to have your own army. Had his own police, had his own pilots, had his own nurses. Kofi, she could have joined other groups. She could have joined Father Divine's Peace Mission Movement, vibrant group, lasted until 1965 or so. Could have joined Daddy Grace Movement, a man who called himself God. If you're God, you're pretty tough. All right? She could have joined that. She could have joined the Black Jews. Black Jews was kicking everybody's butt in the Midwest, Milwaukee and Chicago. But she joined Marcus Garvey. Now, what did she find in the 1920s? Earlier, I said the 1920s for Black America, the Harlem Renaissance, was exciting, didn't I? A lot of things was going on. Music, literature, growth. But also, what else was going on? In the 1920s, there was lynchings. Check this quote. From 1900 to 1920, a black man, a woman, or child was lynched every other day in this country. Did you know that? Every other day. Here's a footnote for you. Probably most of you don't even know. There was an alleged lynching in Mississippi 6 weeks ago, outside of Jackson. You come to my class, I talk to you all about it. All right? These things are going on. All right? So lynchings was going on. What else did she find? She found bombings of black communities. Did you know there were bombings of black communities then? 1921, Oklahoma City. A black community was called what? The Black Wall Street. You ever heard of it? The Black Wall Street had businesses, had over 50 businesses. They had a hospital. It had vets. It had hotels. It had restaurants. And the white community became so incensed by it. Because these Negroes don't supposed to what? Do that. You're supposed to do what? Be happy for working in somebody's house and seeing boss and miss them. All right? But these people were productive and they were aggressive and they carried themselves, like Jesse would say, I am somebody. They carried themselves in that manner. So therefore, 1921, they dropped, not placed a bomb, not walked in the place with the bomb and blew themselves up with everybody else. They dropped the bomb there that destroyed the whole community. How many people were killed in 1921? 3,000. You don't hear about that, do you? Of course you don't. All right? How about Rosewood? Right up the street that was taking place. Whole community massacred. This is the type of America that Kofi walked into. Everything was not just beautiful. Things was hectic. She is coming into a hornet's nest. She was not coming to Disney World. All right? She was not coming to, to go to, I don't know what clubs you go to, Rockers? Roxy's. Yeah. She wasn't going to Roxy's. She was coming someplace else. So she was entering into a real tough world. Next slide, please. All right. I want to go, let's see, we must have missed a slide. Can you go on a little bit, please? Did we miss something? Okay. The one with the Negro world. Go back, please. I'll work it out. Okay, Negro world. Okay, that's it. One? This one. Did we see this one yet? Okay. All right, kind of made me sweat here. All right. Got to compose myself a little bit more. All right, so Kofi joins Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey, he's impressed by this lady. Lady from Africa, tough, strong, pretty, hardcore. He writes in the paper how she is so wonderful that God sent her as a help to him to help people. And other people who began to endorse her was Arthur Schomburg. You ever heard of Arthur Schomburg? How many of you from New York? Nobody? Well, go to the Schomburg Museum, greatest museum, Schomburg Library in Harlem. Schomburg was a Afro-Puerto Rican, all right? Strong, developing the strong core of the African diaspora. He endorsed her, all right? Zora Neale Hurston, you ever heard of her? All right? Zora Neale, all right? So, Kofi, she's bad. T. Thomas Fortune, thinker, writer, liberal, all right? All these people surrounded themselves with Kofi, and they endorsed her. Deuce Muhammad, one of the great early Islamic leaders in the country, said that she is something. Throughout the papers, 500,000 printed weekly, circulated weekly, everything was about Kofi, this African princess traveling, all right? And as the word goes out, she begins to go to different UNIA meetings, speaking in Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia, Memphis, Tennessee. Everywhere she goes, next slide, she is bringing in a lot of people. Okay, let's skip that one. Seems like we kind of got mixed up here. Thank you very much. All right, so, however, what takes place as she is developing, people are beginning to attack Marcus Garvey. Now, why are they attacking Marcus Garvey? She's with Garvey now. Why are they attacking Marcus Garvey? They're jealous because he can organize, he has so many people. People like A. Philip Randolph and Du Bois and Walter White and others create something called the Marcus Garvey Must Go movement. They try to find something on him, all right? The man, let me tell you how honest Marcus Garvey was in this light. The man took in millions of dollars weekly from his organization. He never even owned a house. He lived in a studio apartment that he did not own. He rented in Harlem. Only had 3 suits. His whole element was for the people. Didn't have a car. He ate the same thing every day. And he never went out. If it wasn't on Universal Negro Improvement Association business, he did not leave. But what happened, you had some African American leaders who were jealous, and they tried to find a way to get rid of him. First, they worked with the group that Edgar Hoover developed called the Bureau of Investigation. It later became the FBI to find work on him. Edgar Hoover and the Bureau of Investigation did not like him because of his ability to organize blacks throughout the country. Then they got the Internal Revenue involved with him. Let's try to get him monetarily. Let's try to find something about him. Ultimately, what they found was that out of out of all the millions and the hundreds and out of millions of people who sent him money, they convicted him on one count of mail fraud. A mistake where he collected less than $5 from a person and didn't put their name down. So what he got for it? He got placed in jail for 6 years, fined $6,000. All right? What was it? It was nothing more than a trumped-up charge to destroy one of America's great leaders. All right? So they have him. They got him. Next slide, please. Kofi. Her friend is in jail. They send him to jail, federal penitentiary in Atlanta, not no community lockup. Send him to the federal penitentiary in Atlanta. Do we still have time? Okay. All right. Garvey suffers from health problems, asthma. All right. He's losing hope. Kofi, the African warrior, goes there and visits him. They have a wonderful relationship, a wonderful discussion. She is there with some of her friends and some members of the UNIA, higher up leaders. Garvey is grateful to her, calls her a blessing. She calls Garvey her father, all right? And she continues to push the Garvey program while Garvey is in jail. Garvey names her as his personal field director. That's a big position. That really means you're the person in charge when I'm in jail. Now, some of the people got upset with her because now she's crisscrossing the country. Black woman now. And remember, we're still living in a machismo society. Crossing the country. Everywhere she's going, she is attracting thousands of people. And note, they didn't have internet. It's not like, hey, Kofi's coming in town. Facebook, Twitter, you know, it's not about that. You know, there's nothing on the Channel 13 news. Mad Radical comes in town. No, this is by word of mouth that she's coming and she's attracting thousands and thousands of people. Next slide, please. And as she's attracting, her influence is growing. And now she's also talking more about Africa needs you. But we don't need just black people to go there who don't have nothing. We need educated people to go. We need to develop this Pan-Africanist thing, working together. Africa, African Americans, all right? She's attracting people, all right? Then, as she's beginning to attract more and more people, members of the Garvey infrastructure out of New York, out of Miami, and out of Detroit are jealous. They're saying, hey, how the heck this woman is doing this? She can't even speak in our dialect. How is it she just comes across the water and she's doing these things? And we've been here for a long time. How is it she's not supposed to do this? She's a woman. Woman's supposed to be in the back, right? No, you're supposed to say no. Oh boy, okay. All right, so they're jealous. So they begin to feed information to Garvey that she's stealing money, she's trying to take your position, and that she is just evil. So they even put out a lie that she is not even from Africa, that she is from South Carolina. All right, so I guess they confused the Geechee of South Carolina with the African tongue of West Africa. All right, and you know, so sad. Some people believed it. You know how it is. They put something in the newspaper. It's true. You say something. Hey, you know, so and so stole my dog. He did? I didn't like him anyway. He looked at my dog kind of funny. You know, you just make up stuff and we believe it. Hook, line, and sinker. We got to be a little bit more smarter than that. So they start making up things about her. All right? All right? Now, Garvey turns on her. But there's one group of people that likes her, and that's the Bohemians and the Caribbean people, especially in the Miami area. Now, for a long time, they joined the Marcus Garvey group, but most Caribbean people, they had no idea about going to Africa at this time. Why not? Hey, why not? I'm not going to Africa. They don't have ackee and saltfish. I'm not going. Nah, they don't fix plantanos right. I'm not going. No. The reason why at first they were interested in Garvey's movement but not interested in going to Africa was because they had become very successful business-wise here. They didn't have to go. But now what's taking place? In the mid-1920s, the West Indian black, the Bahamian black was being attacked for their success. Their leaders was being rounded up and beaten up and killed throughout Miami, throughout Fort Lauderdale and other parts of the country. So they said, maybe we should listen to Kofi. Maybe Africa is not a bad place to go. We tried to work it here, but they don't like me so much. So Garvey turns on her. She develops a new base. Now note, when Garvey turned on you, it was a dangerous thing at this time. Garvey was a good man. My father says, he was a tough guy when he was younger. My father says in his wonderful Costa Rican accent, he'll say, I'm good, but I can be bad too. You see, and the point is that Garvey is a good man, but he can be tough. For example, what happened? Because when Garvey threatened you, it's for real. What happened? James Ilson, he was a former Garvey aide. Garvey said he turned turncoat on him, kicked him out of the UNIA for 99 years. So my boy said, James said, okay, I'm not afraid of you, Garvey. I'm going to start my own group. He goes down to New Orleans, all right, and starts something called the Universal Negro Alliance. Well, he wakes up dead, all right? A. Philip Randolph. A. Philip Randolph started messing with Garvey. Garvey, you got to go. I don't like you. You're not from New York. You're a little guy from Jamaica. You don't know who I am. And Garvey said, okay. Allegedly, Garvey sent A. Philip Randolph a gift. Well, it was in a nice little box. Somebody's hand. Don't mess with me. I can be good, be bad too. Next slide. So Kofi, she begins to attract thousands of people. UNI leaders are threatened by her appeal. All right? Some UNI leaders say that, listen, Kofi, you're not a good person. You know why you're not good? You're messing up the good relationship between good black people and good white folk. All right? You just making it hard for us. All right? So they create a Kofi Must Go movement. How does this work? UNIA leaders would go and harass her. They would show up at her lectures and intimidate her and make noise and arguments. Then they had policemen to arrest her. For example, she is speaking at St. Petersburg. How many of you know St. Petersburg? All right? St. Petersburg was a strong place for black nationalism for a while. She goes there speaking, all right? First, when she gets there, the church she is supposed to use, the minister just cancels it. She goes to another church, she cancels it. So she speaks in a park. Still have 800 people to show up. Then, check this out. The local ministers, the black ministers, argue and say that, boy, she must practice some type of roots. She must practice some type of voodoo, obeah, Shango or something. Because she is blinding the people. They don't see her. So they influence the police to arrest her and they strip search her, looking for some type of voodoo charm. All right? Not the first time. She's arrested and strip searched and mistreated in places like Jacksonville, Memphis, Atlanta, all right, Savannah, all right, trying to destroy her and break her will. In fact, some of these people even gave bribes, paid the police to try to arrest her. And one white policeman said, no, this lady's a good lady. she's speaking the truth. She's speaking good things for you and good things for me. Leave her alone. But they were afraid. Next slide, please. You see, why were they afraid? All she wanted was to focus on trade. All right? All she wanted was ships to come from Africa to help black Americans, not black Americans just trading there, but coming back. She wanted education. She wanted to build schools. She wanted to build factories. She wanted to build an African culture in America. She wanted to build a Christian base. That's all what she wanted. Some people couldn't see the good, so they went after her. Next. So, goes to Jacksonville. Now, how many of you are from Jacksonville? In the 1920s, Jacksonville was the hottest and one of the greatest cities in America when it came down to black people, south of the Mason-Dixon line. What did Jacksonville have? That mother, Adorkar, Kofi light. First she said, it's the closest American city to Africa. That's what she said. So we can get there easy, according to her. But Jacksonville was the capital of black filmmaking in the 1920s. How many of you knew that? All right, one person. All right? It had great theaters. It had progressive people. It had wonderful hotels and parks. Jacksonville was not this little country southern town. It was a haven and electricity. It could have been called the Southern Harlem at one time. That's what Jacksonville was. All right? So she went there. And she developed something called the African Universal Church and Commercial League. Modeled after Garvey, very similar. Theme, one God, one aim, one destiny. Religion, a black God, a black Madonna. She is a black prophet herself. Type of religion, we can call it Pentecostal based, but I like to call it African based because it believed in spirits and telling fortunes and so on. That's the type of thing. Next slide. But you know, some people are hard-hit. She couldn't stay out of Miami. Even though they told her she came back, they were going to kill her. All right, so she goes back to Miami. She speaks in Liberty Hall in Liberty City. How many of you know Liberty City? All right, great community. She's speaking to approximately 300 to 500 of her followers. And it was hard for her to find a place because the UNIA and those people were blocking her. But they found a place, Liberty Hall. Just now, this is like a scene that comes up several years later with Malcolm X. As she is getting ready to speak, she tells her bodyguards, don't stand on posts. Don't stand around. She said, the people cannot fear me. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die. I'm here to die. That's what she said. Don't check anyone. Well, UNIA leaders, the African Legion. Remember I talked about the African Legion? There's some bad guys. All right? One came in, and the other one slipped behind the podium. As she is getting ready to give her address, bam, in the back of the head, blew her brains out. Next slide. All right? While she's speaking to her followers. 2 members of the UNIA were caught and beaten, killed. The third got away. They had a trial about it, but they were exonerated. Because what you have really was taking place, even though it was a UNIA member killing a member of the AUC, it was really 2 groups being influenced by outside forces to come to fight each other, to knock each other off. But let me tell you about some things about her. When she died, when she was killed, it took them 2 months to bury her. What I mean by that, as they were on their way to Jacksonville from Miami area, they had little funerals all over the place. People lined up to get a glimpse of her corpse. Lined up. sometimes 3 or 4 or 5,000 deep. I mean, she was buried in a mausoleum in an all-white cemetery in Jacksonville. All right? People said, the whites, they said she was a great woman, because they didn't talk about how that she was anti-white or anything. They talked about she was teaching black people there how to be confident, how to do something for self, how to be great. Next slide. All right. She created, how many of you know Adorkar on on Kings Highway in Jacksonville? The drive, Dumbala Park, Dumbala Drive. All right. It was a utopian community. We're going to do some digging there soon. All right. There were hundreds of people there. Still a few people still live there. And guess what? They still follow her ideas. They still follow her theology. And many of them still speak African tongue, because that's one of the requirements. If you join my group, you must learn how to speak an African tongue. She taught Ga, one of the languages of West Africa. We still see segments of these groups still in existence. South of Jackson, Mississippi, Savannah, Georgia, there's a small area as well, and also in parts of South Carolina. All right? But this lady, you know, there's still more research needs to be done. This is one of the best kept historical secrets, not only in the United States, in Florida, but throughout the country. This tells a new story about black history. See, my idea is just not to tell the same thing, but to go and find new things that will help our learning as to what took place and who we are as a community of people. So I have a lot more. I have an article on it. You can read it one day. And that's it, Doc. Any questions?